Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bubbles, the podcast about comics, anime, movies, pop culture, and all that entails. I am Terry Williams, and next to me, as always, is Mr. Ben Dunn. How are you, sir?
Hello, salutations, everyone.
Cool. So, a lot going on out there. The last few episodes, we've talked a lot about movies, and one of the things that when most people, well, me anyway, I think of movies, one of the big things that come to mind from when I was a kid and even now are Disney movies and blockbusters, and how Disney is kind of just being the seminal it thing for movies forever. But that doesn't seem to be quite like they have the same pull that they used to have.
Yeah, 2024 seems to have been a very bad year for Disney movies. The powerhouse that you mentioned, it was definitely something to be feared in Hollywood at the time. But just recently, it seems like none of their movies have been hitting off with general audiences for some reason. None of their movies have hit $1 billion, which is highly unusual for the amount of money they spent on these movies.
Absolutely.
So you would think that at least one or two of them would have reached that threshold.
Mm-hmm.
But the closest I think any of them came was probably Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and perhaps maybe Wakanda Forever. I'm not sure.
Right.
But they didn't quite break the $1 billion mark, which seems to be the threshold that they need to achieve in order to make these films profitable.
Yeah, I think the last one that reached $1 billion for Disney was Avatar: The Way of Water, was the last one back in 2022.
Yeah, so technically that's not really a Disney film. That was a thing that was acquired from Fox Studios, if I recall. And that's James Cameron's thing. So he gets the lion's share of whatever they make. So that is an outlier, as well as the No Way Home, which was a Sony production, the joint Sony Disney. But again, Disney did not get the lion's share of that box office. So Disney on its own seems to be treading water on as far as their movies are concerned.
Yeah, and so what do you kind of attribute this to? Do you because for me, when I think of Disney movies, and this will tell my age a little bit, I think of animated movies. I think of 101 Dalmatians, stuff like that. That's the movies that I think of as big Disney movies. And, where there's the newer ones, I can't even think of the titles. I know my kids have watched all of them, but that's kind of what I think of. And I don't see a lot of those being made by Disney anymore. I see a lot of live action, that kind of stuff. And it just seems that I can't point to what.
Oh, I'm sure there's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can't say for sure, but I think the fact that social media is a very big factor in the success and failure of a lot of movies these days, because now you can communicate with vast numbers of people on whether a movie is good or not.
Yep.
And it can depend on the opinions of certain influencers, who can actually affect a movie's box office. I also think it's a lot of Disney has just maybe gotten too big for their britches. They got just a lot of hubris. Maybe they thought they could do no wrong no matter what they did.
Yep.
There is a certain amount of, I'm sure, confidence in their ability, since their past performances have been very impressive. But recently, some people have said that the writing is just not as good. That for some reason their model of doing things in post is not working for them.
Yep.
Instead of sitting down with the traditional group of creators who have a singular vision of how something should go, they have a whole bunch of committees to see how they should structure a movie, and then they have the attitude of fix it in post. If it doesn't work, we just go back and reshoot, and do it. But gets very expensive.
Yep. Do you think that the strike affected anything this year?
Oh, there's no doubt. The strike definitely had an effect on their bottom line, for sure.
And I think going forward, for me, I think one of the big things that for Disney to overcome is going to be the whole Bob Iger stance on that whole strike, how he basically came out and just said, they shouldn't make anymore. It is what it is, kind of.
I think there's a lot of people are I think maybe the public at large is starting to distrust Disney as a brand.
Right.
Disney has always been, or until recently, a brand that parents and people could trust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that there was no agenda, there was no political leanings. It was just simply trying to entertain a family audience, and that was their, modus operandi.
Yes.
You know, it only hasn't just until recently when they acquired big name brands like Marvel and Fox and Star Wars that they started to utilize those brands in a way that a lot of people just didn't seem to connect with.
Right. Yeah, Disney has always been that stereotypical, wholesome, family-oriented, safe place that everybody, no one, if your kids were watching a Disney movie, you didn't question it. You just, okay, cool, watch a Disney movie. You're fine. It's safe.
Right. The parents would traditionally just plop their kids in front of any Disney product, and they had no qualms about trusting it to be sure that it was the entertainment that would be appropriate for their children.
Right.
But recently, from what I understand, they've been injecting a lot of questionable material.
Yep.
That have parents questioning the viability of Disney products for their kids.
Yes, and I don't think that it helps any with the stuff that's been rumored about, as far as a workplace, that kind of thing, with the basically the ethnic and racial stereotyping. There's been rumors of sexism, plagiarism, all that kind of stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. And I also think another big part of their struggles at this point in time is, you hear about, whenever I hear about Disney in the news, it's always tied to something political with the state of Florida. It it seems like that goes hand in hand. And whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, for a lot of us, we get so burnt out on it. Let me rephrase. For me, I get so burnt out on hearing the political stuff all the time that I really don't want it infiltrating my watching in my movie, because that's where I go to get away from the real world. So when I start hearing Disney and associating it with politics, I'm just saying, I don't care. It's a subliminal little turnoff for me.
I agree.
Yeah, well, yes, for sure. The higher ups at Disney seem to have an agenda. In order to further that agenda, they infiltrated their entertainment, and that unfortunately has ramifications. Apparently, people are getting tired of it or distrust them, and that's the thing about, you can build decades of trust, and all you have to do is do something really wrong for one thing, and you can destroy those decades of trust.
Yes,
and it takes a lot to rebuild that trust again, because once you don't deliver on something, once you don't deliver on a promise, then it's very difficult for me to trust you again.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to put in, just on the entertainment side of things, political and all the other stuff aside, Disney as a brand has just not delivered in the past couple of years. They've had some huge acquisitions. Yeah. They acquired Lucasfilm and they acquired 20th Century Fox.
Yep.
And I think the overall consensus of almost all the Star Wars films that have come out since then, almost all the X-Men movies are in shambles since they got there. And I don't think it's a secret anymore to say Marvel movies in general, since those acquisitions, have gone down in quality.
That's true.
And it's just there's a sense of like a little bit of a quality dip right now with Disney, and even by extension even like Pixar and other brands that Disney owns. There's just a little bit of a dip there, and I think people are kind of noticing it more now than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. That's the thing about I think that's the thing about studios like Disney, is that they get to the point where they feel like they can do no wrong. They can become, for lack of a better word, arrogant. Mm-hmm. They feel like anything they do is, but that's fleeting. You're only as good as the last project. There's an old saying in Hollywood: you're only as good as your last project you've had. Mm-hmm. So if you don't maintain, the quality, you don't maintain, loyalty to your fans, eventually it's going to come back on you. And that's another thing that sort of is perplexing to me, is they're so anti-fan. I don't know why it is that Disney has to go out and try to denigrate the very people who are trying to support them. And it just seems perplexing to me that they would take that kind of attitude. Instead of the attitude of, okay, well, hey, you didn't like this. We're going to go back. We're going to do better. We're going to start creating stuff that you will really like. They figure, well, it's your fault. It's your fault that you failed, that we failed, and the product we did was fine. You just don't understand it, and I think that's the worst thing you can do to lose an audience, is to denigrate the very people you're trying to win over.
Yeah, especially with the brands that they've recently purchased, like Josh mentioned, with things like iconic brands like Star Wars, Lucasfilms, that kind of stuff. Those have had followings, huge followings, and when you start basically doing something that the fans don't think go with that, I don't even know what I'm trying to say now. I lost the
Well, what's ironic is that Disney was primarily a girls' brand. Before they bought all those properties,
right, yeah.
The princesses.
It was all about the princesses, and they were original material.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
they created properties, IPs from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until they started buying the Star Wars and Marvel, which are essentially boys' brands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and hope is that they were trying to win over the boys' market. Okay.
True.
Unfortunately, they turned them into girls' brands. They took great, male properties, which are ideally primarily male properties, and Disneyfied them. Made them made them different than what they were originally intended.
Right.
It's almost like if you bought the Colonel's Secret Recipe, and you decided that, I'm just going to add a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's no longer.
It's no longer
the KFC recipe.
But you still package it up the same way and try to convince people that it is.
Exactly.
And I think part of it could be that, being Disney was already huge, and they added all these other brands basically to their fold. And I just think maybe they overshot as far as what they could handle at once and maintain a good product. So it got watered down because they know there's a craving for Star Wars. There's a craving for Marvel. There's all these cravings out there from the public who have been throughout the years supporting the Marvel Universe or Star Wars. And so they're like, hey, man, now we own this product. Let's get out as much new material as we can, and didn't kind of baby it enough, monitor it enough, and it just kind of went out before it probably should have, or not the quality that it should have been.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. The fact of the matter is that they paid huge sums of money for these properties. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they were under pressure to release as much product as possible based on those properties in order to recoup.
Yep.
But instead of, understanding why they bought it,
mm-hmm.
And trying to coddle it and try to develop it and getting qualified people to actually, take those properties and continue what made them successful, they decided that they thought they could do better. They could put their own people in there, that they could change it fundamentally, and that they would still maintain. They had the idea they could still maintain the fan base no matter what they put out.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt for me as far as the Star Wars properties, as far as the series, because the Mandalorian started off great, and I still liked it, but then like everything after that, from Andor to Obi-Wan to Boba Fett to Osaka, all of these are just, it's like they seem to just be getting more and more diluted and more hurried, kind of like the last season of Game of Thrones, where you're just get it out. And what it was to what it ends up is not nearly the same quality. And you can tell.
Yeah, well, ironically, Mandalorian wasn't taken seriously.
I know.
When the first season came out, they thought that they left them alone. Mm-hmm. They said, yeah, just do your own little thing. And they came out with essentially a Star Wars series. Yep. And it was very Star Wars-esque. And it turned out to be a huge hit, mm-hmm. And then when it was actually a victim of his own success, mm-hmm. because it was such a huge hit. Disney took notice and decided, then now we're going to interfere.
Yeah. Now let's get more. Let's get more. We have this money we spent, so we need to get it back right now.
Yeah, I think the fact that they knew that Baby Yoda was such a big hit that they said, we want more Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
So instead of
definitely tell.
Instead of following the progression of the story that it should have followed, they were forced to go ahead and do what they mandated.
Yeah, come on. We can sell those little plushies all over the
more
world.
More Grogu.
Grogu plushies for
That's
everyone.
probably why Boba Fett didn't turn out the way it was supposed to have turned out.
And that's what really, because out of every Star Wars character, Boba Fett is by far my favorite. And to see that product really, really disappointed me. I mean, everyone knows I'm a Star Trek guy first, but I love the Star Wars universe, and that just really let me down. It really did. And, I don't know. It was just one of those, I had these really high expectations, and because he is such an iconic character, and it's like they just kind of said, let's just rush it out and get it out.
Well, I mean, Boba Fett, to me, reeks of studio interference. Okay? I mean, if they had just let the people who made a Mandalorian a success, leave them alone, do their little Boba Fett thing, as it should be, I probably would have think that it would come out, way better.
Yep.
Than they. I mean, ironically, the best episodes in Boba Fett were the 2 Mandalorian episodes.
Exactly.
No Boba Fett.
But how many stories of this have we heard where studio interference? Like, I mean, the age-old tale that we comic book nerds know of is Spider-Man 3. I mean, Sam Raimi's vision just completely torn to shreds and created into this whatever Tobey Maguire finger gunning people down the street kind of thing. I mean, it's there's so many stories. There's so many stories of studio interfering. I mean, we would have got. I mean, another thing that nobody talks about to this day, we would have gotten a Guillermo del Toro Hellboy 3 by now if studios would. He had a budget of, I think, $120 million, which is not small, but also not big necessarily for a big movie like Hellboy. And by the way, Hellboy 2 is a phenomenal movie. And the studio said, it's too big. We don't want to give you that money. And he trimmed it down to $80 million, and they still said no. Yep. And it's just, you hate to hear when a studio decides that, we know more about art than you, the artist.
Yep.
But it is a classic age-old tale.
Yeah. So with the Disney, like that kind of sums up kind of some of the things that they're missing with the properties that they've purchased. But what's happened to their original material, to their, like, Princess and the Frog is one that comes to mind for me, that Disney created that. And I remember it so vividly because my daughter absolutely loved that when it came out. And it's like, this is what I'm used to with Disney. And you don't see that quality anymore.
I think a lot of it, I mean, they do still original material, but it's not coming from Disney. I mean, Pixar had 3 original movies last year.
Yeah.
Soul, Red, and Luca. I think that...
Red is an underrated movie, though. I would say that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they are very entertaining. The problem is that they were never released in the theaters.
No.
Okay. Right. So they were all released on streaming. And Disney decided to go all in on streaming, and unfortunately it's really starting to bite them in the butt because, the amount of content they have to create in order to maintain their subscriber base is astronomical.
It pulls their focus from other things.
Maybe that's because I think they missed the boat in that going to the movies. Yes, we got used to during the pandemic of streaming and watching things there, but now that the world is basically open again, I, for one, enjoy going to the movies and seeing,
me too.
Because I don't care how great my home theater is, there's nothing like walking in a theater, smelling the popcorn, and the whole event of a new releases there or whatever. I mean, Josh, you and I went to The Flash, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
the movie wasn't. Looking back, it wasn't the best movie, but it seemed so much better.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the ambiance.
Yeah.
Like, you can't replace it no matter how many speakers you try to surround sound yourself at home. It just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Well, plus the large screen. I mean, you're immersed into
exactly.
it.
So
also the stainless steel canisters they hold that Coke in.
Yeah, right.
It makes it taste better. You know?
So missing stuff like that, I think, not having the blockbuster, because used to every summer there was some Disney blockbuster. There was some Disney movie coming out that may not be the blockbuster of the year, like Men in Black or something like that. But it was always a big movie, a big Disney movie every year, every summer, pretty much.
Well, yeah, ironically, that's the thing about it is that Disney didn't used to be that way. They used to create little small films, and they would do take chances every once in a while on something new and different, But I think, unfortunately, they put all their eggs in one basket, with the big blockbuster IPs, and neglecting, their own. Their own storytelling abilities.
Right.
They were relying so much on the IPs that they forgot how to tell a story.
I think they're missing out on their audience, honestly.
I think so, too.
Because, Disney's always been that kid-friendly, kid-relatable kid thing, G or PG at the max. And everybody, like you said, you could just, if it was Disney, no matter the age of your child, you were fine with them watching it. And I don't see that anymore.
And they were a trusted brand.
Yeah. And now that trust is gone.
Yeah, it's definitely diminished.
Yeah.
There's always going to be Disney fans. I'm still a Disney fan.
Oh, yeah.
I still love the body of work that Disney has created. I love their classic animated films. I love their live action films, which they're very underrated. They did things like Absent Minded Professor. They did the Dexter Riley comedies. They had Herbie the Love Bug.
Yep.
They've done all those things, and they were all low budget, family films that Disney still could do if they really wanted to, But for some reason, they decided to go all in on these big, huge, blockbuster IPs. Now, the thing about it is that if you look at the number one movies now is like. Godzilla -1 was supposedly done on a budget of less than $15 million. Okay, the Marvels was cost like $250 million.
Right.
So if you think about it, you could have done 20 Godzilla -1s on the budget of one Marvels movie. And it just boggles the mind just how much money Disney is spending on movies when instead of trying to create that one, put all your eggs in one basket kind of mentality where you have to spend big to do big, they need to learn lessons from movies like The Joker, which was made for less than $100 million and grossed, $1 billion? Yep. Look at Godzilla -1, less than $15 million.
Yeah, and it's grossing ridiculous amounts.
It's grossing a lot of money.
It's going to be huge.
What do you think the last year Disney really killed it?
The last year?
Disney or project that you
I think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was probably their best on.
Nah, but that wasn't a kill it. That they didn't gross over $1 billion. It wasn't that great
Disney?
of a movie.
Encanto wasn't Disney, was it?
Encanto was Disney, but
maybe Encanto.
That was a year ago, or 2 years ago.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to go back to like 2016.
Yeah.
With what?
No, I'm not talking Marvel aside. Aside, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Because they weren't Marvel then. It wasn't Disney.
Last year that I can think of that truly like Disney killed it was 2016, in my opinion, because that was the year that they released both Zootopia, huge movie, and they also released Moana, huge movie.
Yes.
After that,
both of those were typical Disney blockbuster type movies.
Frozen 2, I think, was another one.
Frozen 2, yeah, but it did not hit the heights. Zootopia won Best Animated Movie that year. Frozen 2 did not.
True, but it did very well box office.
It did, but not as well as Moana or Zootopia.
That might be. Because with me, the last big one that I remember, and I only remember it because of the grandkids and the soundtrack was Encanto. That was one of those that
but that initially did very poorly.
Yeah, it did. It didn't.
It took a while to catch on.
But they also pushed that on the streaming service, which goes back to
which is where we actually watched it was on the streaming service.
Yeah, they pushed that really hard to be on the stream service.
Well, there's no doubt that Disney.
You might be right, Josh. 2016, 2017, something like that.
Something like that. Like it's just been a long time since some really, really huge, great stuff has been released by them.
Yeah, definitely a movie that people are talking about for sure. Like Zootopia is definitely a good example of that. Disney's no doubt is good at doing princess movies. They can do it, and which is kind of ironic because if they had done Marvel's like a princess movie, I think it probably would have done better. Instead of treating it like a superhero movie, they should have treated it like a princess movie. But they didn't do that tack. But Disney there's no doubt that they can do good princess movies, but they just haven't done one in a long time because I don't know why. Maybe they feel like it's an outdated concept
Yeah.
of doing
So
a princess
I guess
movie.
I guess Frozen would count as a princess movie, probably.
Yeah, Frozen 2. Yeah,
Frozen,
2019.
Frozen 2, Princess and the Frog. Princess and the
Now,
Frog, like I said,
is
is the one.
Princess
Zootopia
and the
a
Frog.
princess movie?
Not
Not
necessarily.
not in
but
the
Moana,
stereotypical.
Moana would be.
Moana would be,
much
yeah.
more classified as.
So,
yeah.
well, wait a minute. Was the live action? Oh my gosh, the Mermaid movie was
Little
that
Mermaid?
Little Mermaid? Was that Disney?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
it-
that still didn't go
didn't hit $1
over.
billion.
Yeah, it didn't do
well.
Yeah, it was
Didn't
like
do well.
Yeah,
Yeah, in relation to this budget. I mean, if they had done Little Mermaid at like a less $100 million, it would have been a big hit.
Yeah.
It'd been huge, but it was like a $300 million movie. So,
yeah.
they had to make.
And I didn't hear, like, I remember when the Little Mermaid came out, the animated, it was huge, and this one just didn't get that. Outside of here and there hearing like how it was bombing, I didn't hear about the movie.
Yeah, well, the thing about, it used to be, and I'm not sure they still believe that they have the philosophy that they do a really good movie, and even if it doesn't do well initially, they can continue to make income off of it decades later.
Yeah.
Okay. Then through licensing, through re-releases.
Streaming.
I mean, the big thing about the Disney Vault was that they released, their animated movies on a cycle.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing that. I don't know when the last Vault movie was released.
The streaming killed it. Okay, now you can see everything you want on streaming. You don't have to go buy physical media anymore.
Yeah, it's much different now.
True.
So, they've broken the habit, basically. So they abandoned a revenue stream for no other reason than just to prop up their streaming service.
Yeah.
And which is a bizarre attitude to take, because why would you abandon a revenue stream that works so well, for something else that is untested?
Maybe just outthinking themselves. We do that sometimes. Wow. Another one of those questions.
Well, what do you think of the 2024 slate? I think they have one movie next year. Just one.
I haven't looked a lot at that.
It's Deadpool 3 is the only one they have.
Which is what's been really weird. Normally, I would know, like, oh, this movie's coming out from Disney, this movie. And now I'm like, Disney?
As far as I know, Deadpool 3 is the
yeah.
only new one that's coming out. They're re-releasing all the Pixar movies they didn't release in theaters.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see how well those do box office-wise.
Something to look forward to for sure. Another thing to look forward to in 2024, folks. Again, this has been Beyond the Bubbles, and another topic well broached, I think. It's one of those that it actually made me think a little bit when we were discussing this. But again, folks, we want to thank you guys for tuning in, checking us out, listening. We are on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes, which go check us out in any of those formats. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. We have some TikTok shorts out there, so go and like those, subscribe to the channels, like us. You can always, if you need commissions, want to know where you can meet Ben, I'm sure he'll let you know where he's going to be coming up at. I'm sure you can reach him on his socials, so why don't you let him know that?
Yeah, you can go to bendunncomics.com. I'm also on Facebook, TikTok, and also Instagram and X Twitter. So, yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're searching Beyond the Bubbles, make sure to put the S on the end of bubbles, because Beyond the Bubble is some political thing, I think. So Beyond the Bubbles with an S.
We have multiple bubbles.
Multiple bubbles, like thought bubbles.
Not to be confused.
Yes. And once again, folks, thank you. We will see you soon. Thanks.
Adios.